Welcome to A Walk in the Garden. I'm Liz Davey, and you're watching this program on NCTV, Norfolk Community Cable Television. This is a series of garden shows. It's filmed in my garden here in Norfolk. Right now we're at the end of June, and everything is really quite green and lovely right now. I'm standing in my herb garden today, and one of my roses here is blooming. It's probably the first thing you see. And this is called Rose officinalis. It's very fragrant. It only blooms once a year, so within another 2 weeks, by the time we come back to do another segment, it will probably be gone, and I'll have deadheaded all the old blooms. It is a very fragrant rose. It's used a lot, and has been in the past at least, in perfumes, and it makes lovely potpourri if you can bear to cut the petals and take them in and dry them. A very pretty rose, and it is an herb garden thing. You can use the petals, which are somewhat heart-shaped. You can candy those with egg white and fine sugar, and they will keep that way for quite a long time and can be used to decorate desserts. The rose petals can also be used in any recipe that calls for rose petals, if you don't spray it, and I don't spray any of my roses. I have another rose called Rosamunde, which is now out of bloom. It has similar petals, but they are streaked with white as well as the pink. It too is one of the very old roses and appropriate for an herb garden. Almost all of the herbs in the garden can be picked now. I grow a variety of savory herbs, thymes, rosemary, sage, and also some of the sweeter herbs, lavender, mint, and some of the scented geraniums. I also grow some just for the enjoyment of them. Some of them were once used in medicinal compounds, but are no longer. One of those is valerian. I guess the roots are still used in some of the health food type compounds as a sleep-inducing thing. The scent of it is beautiful. There are the white blooms back here, and it has just a intoxicating scent. That's enough to put you to sleep right there. A vase of these on your bedside table. Others that I grow just because I like them are rue and southernwood and tansy. Now some of those have some moth-resistant properties, so a bouquet of those can be hung in a coat closet, and the pungent odor of these herbs will repel moths. Today I'm going to start harvesting some of the herbs, and I'm going to start with the oregano. One of the best times to pick your herbs for drying is right before they start to bloom. And these are starting to put on blossoming buds, so I'll just pick some of it. I like to use some of it fresh, but it's nice to dry some for winter use as well. Tarragon also dries well, and it too can be picked about this time. Once I've collected a handful of the oregano, I'll fasten it with a rubber band. You can use string, but because the herbs will shrink as they dry, I like to use a rubber band so they don't come undone. I'll take these in the house and hang them in a cool, dry spot, my dining room probably, which is fairly dim and out of full sun, and just let them dry until they've completely dried. I'll make sure first that there are no insects on them and run them through a swish of water and let them dry, just to make sure that there's nothing on them that I don't want dried. Again, I use no pesticides, so they're really quite safe. The lavender is starting to come into bloom, and we'll be using that in some culinary dishes later on. It's what I would call a sweet herb. Now let's move over to the perennial garden. Okay, coming into the perennial garden. One of the tasks in the perennial garden now is to remove all the old bulb foliage as it goes brown. And most of it has fallen down and a lot of it is turning brown. So we can just put that in our basket and get rid of it. And as you go along, you can also pull any weeds that have come up around that bulb foliage. The next thing would be deadheading of perennials, and I have coral bells here. They're still blooming pretty well. Once they stop blooming, we'll take these shoots off. This is a salvia, and the salvia will continue to bloom for quite a long time if we keep it deadheaded. And by deadheading, I mean removing spent blooms. If you look at salvia, you can see that there are new shoots coming up from the base. Where there are several leaves, you'll see new plants coming right out at the junction. It kind of forms in threes. And then you can take it off. You can see where the new blossoms will be coming. So you just basically remove that set of plants down to that point, and before you know it, you'll have new flower shoots. We'll leave these because they're still blooming. Once you remove a lot of the dead foliage from the plants, you need to replace it with something. And that's where some annuals come in, and there are self-seeded annuals that are coming up throughout the garden. These are actually perennials that are coming up. They're foxgloves, which were seeded last year. We'll leave those and maybe transplant a few of those for bloom next year. Lilies right now are in bloom, and these are a lily, and we've kept the lily beetles off of them. However, you have to keep watch because you still may see one. They have several cycles per year. So you'll have adult red beetles, and then you'll have the larvae after they've laid eggs, and then again the red beetles. So you really have to keep watch if you want to grow lilies. Lilies add a lot to the summer garden, and I really love them. So I do want to grow them. Also, adding to the picture of the garden in this season would be daylilies. And these aren't blooming yet. They will be in about a week. They've formed good buds. They are not the same family as a regular Asiatic or a hybrid lily. These are the hybrid lilies, and they form from a bulb that you plant in the fall. The daylily is a plant, and it has roots, and again, you can transplant them spring or fall. They're both called lilies, but they are not in the same family. Have a lot of other bulb foliage down in here that's going to be removed. It will leave quite a large dead spot. So what I want to do is build a planter, and what I'm using here is a old bird bath base. The top fell and broke, which they often do. And I've put a hanging basket top on top of it without the hanger. Again, recycling at its best. And I've used a wooden or a metal stake down through the middle of this to hold it so that it won't fall off of the stake. And I put that right up through the bottom of the basket and the liner. And I'm going to add some annuals to that. An annual plant is one that blooms, is not hardy in the location where it is, and then it dies back. And I'm going to add some annuals to this planter. And we actually will probably need to add a little soil later. And I'm adding some verbena. This likes full sun, and it will bloom all summer. Again, if once the blooms go by, you do need to remove the dead blossom. and it will keep on blooming. This pot will need to be watered regularly. And I'll also need to add some fertilizer from time to time to keep these going. I'm also going to add one of the mini petunias. And hopefully these things will come out over the edge of the pot as the summer wears on. And add a little more color to this end of the garden once the other things are gone. The nectar garlic or nectoscorotum, those are ready to be deadheaded. I'm waiting a little while to see if they have a decorative pod that might be used in flower arranging. I tend to leave the poppy pods for that reason. Come out and add a little water to this planter and make sure that I keep it watered well. Make sure we've covered all the roots well. Filling in with pots of annual flowers is something I'll do even more as things go by, and I have spots in the garden that need a little extra color. These are a campanula, and they're called Campanula Elizabeth. It's a bell flower. They also come in blue shades. They are somewhat invasive, so you do need to keep an eye on them and make sure that you restrict their space, or they will take over the garden. The verbascum is still in bloom. Again, once I deadhead some of these stalks that are in here, and there are some that have gone by already, there will be a few more new stalks that continue to come up. Once it's gone, I'll cut the stalks all the way back to the ground. This is a penstemon, Husker's Red. You'll notice it has white flowers. If you read the label, you would think it was red. It's the stems that they're talking about, not the flowers. The name Husker's Red. The foliage also tends to be a little red as it emerges in the spring. Another task right now deals with asters. The asters are going to bloom in the fall, but they tend to be prone to mildew. So what I'd like to do now is thin them out a little bit. So I'll just cut out about one of every 3 and discard it. This gives a little more air circulation, which helps with the mildew situation. It cuts down a bit on the blooming, but mildew can be pretty disfiguring, and it also cuts down on the blooming, so we'll just ensure that these stay healthy by removing some of the stalks. Another thing you can do is spray it, and I'll probably do that also. And I'll use a product called Serenade. This is Serenade, and just coat the leaves periodically with it. It is one of the more organic compounds. I tend not to use pesticides and have been rewarded by lots of bees this year. You can also use half milk and half water, just regular whole milk and water, and that is what I will use on things that I'm going to eat, plants that produce something to eat, like squash, which is also prone to mildew. You can do the same thing with phlox, which some varieties of phlox are mildew resistant. Some of the older varieties that you may have in your garden tend to get coated with that powdery white coating, which is powdery mildew, downy mildew, and you want to eliminate that. So either the spray, thinning out a little bit always helps, and watching it carefully to see if you have a problem. The poppies I tend to leave until they turn a little bit brown at least, and then I'll cut those back. I like to use these in fall and winter arrangements. The seed heads are quite attractive. This one does not open. The seed heads are closed. The annual poppies, which bloom a little bit later, have a seed head that opens and they spray out the seeds, which is why they come up again the next year. They're an annual poppy and they reseed themselves. The daisies will get deadheaded all the way back. This is their last bloom. This is an early daisy. And I'll cut this all the way back. This will leave more room to enjoy some of the things that are behind it, like the lavender and the rose that's next to it. This is a knockout rose, and once it's finished its first flush of bloom, unlike the roses in the herb garden, this will continue to bloom, and I'll add some fertilizer around it after each flush of bloom until about August. At that point, we want it to harden off and get ready for winter. So after this set of bloom has pretty much diminished, I'll add a little more fertilizer and see if we can keep it blooming. I have Veronica in back. We planted some annuals here, which are starting to come up through the old bulb foliage, and once it's out, they should bloom. Coreopsis is getting ready to bloom. It's not quite there yet. We have some decorative pods from the sedum. Again, I'll leave those because they're quite decorative in the garden. This area is from larkspur. I had one larkspur plant last year, but it dropped seed in this area. And so this year we have a lot of larkspur right here. Larkspur is an annual, but it's reseeding itself nicely. The peonies are pretty much gone. We have an occasional bloom, but most of them too can be deadheaded. It makes for a much neater garden if you just remove the things once they're gone. And I think there's a few more over here that are, well, that one still has a few blooms on it. I try to go around the garden about once every day or two and remove those things that need to be removed, pull any weeds that have sprouted. It really isn't a big job when you do it gradually. The other thing I like to do is keep my hummingbird feeder filled. I've noticed quite a few hummingbirds, some on the flowers, some on the feeder. I use a mixture of 4 to 1, just plain white sugar and water, which I boil and then cool and fill the feeder. Hummingbirds will not come to a dirty feeder, so if your feeder solution gets dirty or nasty looking, you won't get any hummingbirds. You do need to replace it several times a week in order to get any hummingbirds. Now let's move on to the vegetable garden. Things are up and moving in the vegetable garden. I have lots of cilantro around my squash, and I've been trying to keep it weeded. It will soon go. It's already showing signs of going to seed, so I will be picking and making pesto and using as much as I can. I have some that I've seeded in another part of the garden, so we'll still have some cilantro to use as the time goes by. In this area, I also have my squash. There's also some dill coming up in here. I'll leave that. And there's a few flowers. We had flowers here last year and some of them self-seeded. I noticed a nice bachelor button, and there's some calendula in here too. Those I'll leave as long as I can, as long as they don't interfere with the squash. And we'll harvest some of the dill and the cilantro. But one of the things I do to help keep the squash healthy is to surround it with aluminum foil. I've done this the last few years and it seems to work pretty well. I'll just put a layer around it, and it seems to discourage those moths that lay the eggs at the base of the squash, at least somewhat. I will need to get some rocks over here And I do have a collection of rocks, so rocks that I take out of the garden, I put at the side of the garden so that I can use them later to hold things down. Otherwise, this will blow away. But each of the squash will get a surround of aluminum foil, and that'll hopefully help keep some of the pests away. I think it confuses them, they have trouble flying in. I don't know, but it seems to work. The other thing we need to finish is the cucumber teepee. The cucumbers are up and really starting to climb. So I've started it, but what I do is put a row of string along the bottom. And then I'll just wrap string around it. Around that bottom string and back up around the top of the posts. When I'm finished, I'll bring it down near where I started and cut it and tie it off. Our cucumbers will start climbing this. Sometimes you have to give them a little help to start out, but very shortly they will climb all the way to the top and start producing some cucumbers for us. This is a good way to grow them rather than having them sprawl all over the garden. It's very hard to weed cucumbers that are all over through everything else. At least I feel it is. I'm harvesting quite a few things at this point. One of the things is strawberries, and you'll notice I've covered them with a nylon net. I've got it held down with rocks. Still hasn't kept all of the chipmunks out. So I've been picking the strawberries when they are not quite ripe and bringing them inside to finish ripening up on the kitchen counter. I put them on glass pans and put them on the counter in a single layer, and usually all it takes is about 12 to 24 hours and they'll be fully ripe. So far, a friend gave me that idea, and so far it's worked, and I've had more strawberries than usual out of this patch. This is the second year the patch has been in. Last year they were new, and we had to take all the blossoms off. This gave us some very sturdy plants, lots of runners, and this year they're going crazy and producing lots of strawberries. We can also pick lettuce. This was a variety grouping of lettuce. This is a cut and come again variety. If we cut the outer leaves off and use them, we should be able to get it to produce for quite a bit longer. To go with that were the bitter greens, arugula. There's some arugula in here. I also planted some arugula separately because it's one of the things we really enjoy. Some of these are starting to go to seed, and if you pick them off, you could save it a little bit longer. There's some chervil, and there's also some mustardy greens in here, but they add a little tang to the salad, so we'll pick some of those to put in a salad. Again, to pick the strawberries, I'll move the rocks out of the way and lift the net over to one side. When I'm finished, I bring it back over, put the rocks back on. It has helped keep birds particularly out of it. I have lots of birds around here. They love strawberries too. They'll get occasional one, but not too many. I brought my amaryllis out and planted it behind the garden so that it can start forming a bulb, a stronger bulb to get some blooms this winter inside. That'll stay out this summer. I'll fertilize it, water it along with the garden, and hopefully we'll have some nice amaryllis next winter to cheer up the winter days. One of the things you need to do if you plant beets is to thin them out. And these are the beets, and in spite of trying to keep them fairly far apart, each seed will produce more than one plant. And it's necessary to pull those plants out at this point. And there are little baby beets in there, but you do need to thin them till they're several inches apart. It's a picky job, but it does need to be done if you want to get a full beet harvest and have nice beets. Again, we spaced them out fairly well, but there are still some that have more than one in the spot where there should be only one. Not to waste them though, you can use those beet greens in salads. They're nice little tender beet greens at this point. So just save the leaves and add them to salad or stir fry. This will be true of the golden beets that we have as well. It's almost impossible to space those out. We have a few radishes we can pick. I didn't plant too many, we don't use too many, but they do add nicely to salad. And we have some nice little round red balls. They're nice when they're tender. Scallions are another thing we can certainly keep picking and using. We'll add those to the basket. And then we have garlic scapes. And garlic scapes are the seed pods that form on the top of the garlic. This will make a flower and go to seed. We don't want it to because we want the energy of these plants to go into the bulb of the plant because that's what we're really interested in, getting some nice cloves of garlic. However, these are used in the kitchen. They're a gourmet item because they only happen once a year at this time when the garlic is growing. Garlic itself keeps very well. These we will be using in the kitchen today to cook a few things. The perpetual spinach is coming and the young leaves are ready to pick as well. You can add those to salad now. Use them more like spinach later on. This will keep forming leaves if you just pick the outer leaves off. We have lots of salad makings here right now. Peas are coming along really well. We're forming pods, and we should have some nice snow peas almost within the next week. We'll have some good snow peas, enough for a few stir fries, and the shell peas will follow shortly thereafter. We had 3 types of peas planted. The snow peas, which are the Chinese peas where you eat the pod, the snap peas where you eat the peas and the pod, and then the shell peas where you eat just the peas that come out of the pod. Now let's go back to the shade garden. Coming into the shade garden now, and you can see it's really filled in. There are a few tasks to do in the shade garden. One thing about my shade garden, at least, is that there's not much weeding to do because I have so much plant cover. Also, weeds tend to grow a little slower in the shade, So you can probably, if you have a shade garden, weed less. It's one advantage to gardening in the shade, are fewer weeds, and most of those like full sun. So it helps you out a little bit. One of the things we need to do right now is to do a little just housekeeping chores, and that's deadheading plants. The Berneras have already bloomed, so I'll just remove these seed stalks. I have enough Bernera. I don't really need too many of them to go to seed in order to replace it. There's a fairly short-lived plant, but it's still, we have plenty from all over the place. The other thing is the hellebores, which bloomed and bloomed and bloomed. Now the shoots on them have become rather unsightly. Many of them are covered and you won't even see them, but those that kind of stick out, I like to take off. Most of them have dropped seed already. I do like to have some seedlings. I share them with people. So I go in and do take off some of the spent seed heads just as a housekeeping exercise. Most things I cut off I will compost, but not the hellebores. The hellebore is a poison plant, something you need to consider if you have pets or children that eat them. You might not want to have them. I don't have either, so I love growing them. But I do compost any of the foliage that I cut off, or don't compost. Excuse me on that one. No composting of it. I put this one in the trash. There's a few more. Another task is reining back some of the ground covers that I have in here. Tend to get a little over exuberant, and they come out into the paths a little more than I'd like. They encroach on other plants. So at this point, I will also remove some of them. Again, I may not want to compost all of the ground covers because they tend to grow wherever they go. And I don't necessarily want to introduce some of these into other areas. I have quite a bit of myrtle, lamium, and the sweet woodruff. And again, that can get a little out of hand if you have a walking way or some of these. So paths are one of the things I look to clear out a little bit as I take these other things off the plants. This one is, again, encroaching on the path a bit. So we'll just rein it in a little bit. And again, these will go into the trash bag so that I don't have them spreading in places I don't want them to. Now I'll move back towards the pond and see what's going on there. Things are going well with the pond, and it's been an enjoyable place to sit. It's been about a month since I put some of the water plants in the pond. They'd been in the wintering over inside, but it's time to put some fertilizer in them. And I have these fertilizer tablets that are for aquatic plants. And I'm just going to lift this guy out and poke in one of these little buttons. And I'll do that with the other plants as well. And at this point I can also, any dead leaves that are in the plant or stalks that are completely dead, I can remove as well. I did cut this one back. It's starting to put on new growth. Probably could do some more cutting on it. And I'll put it back in its pot, and we'll continue doing this with the other few plants that I have here. I don't grow many plants in my water garden. If it were in the full sun, I would have a wider range of plants available. Water lilies I have tried. If it has a bud when I buy it, I have one water lily, but it doesn't form new ones. It's just too shady back here. If I were doing a pond again, I would probably put it in a little sunnier location. However, in a sunnier location, you'll get more algae. So there are pluses and minuses. You can grow more plants, but you will have more of an algae problem with the pond. I do clean the filters periodically because we do have a lot of leaves, branches, other little things falling into the pond. I've also put in the aerators, and they seem to help stir up the water and keep it a little cleaner. The fish seem happy. I feed them probably twice a day. If it's really, really hot, I'll feed them 3 times a day. Fish's metabolism go along with the temperature of the air and the water. So when it gets really warm, their metabolism is at its highest and they require more food. They're always happy to see me and come right over to the edge. They know they're going to get fed. It's also time to put out some containers of shade-loving plants. And I've used fuchsia that I kept over inside. These are the cuttings we did last fall of the fuchsia that I had. It hasn't bloomed here yet. And I've put in coleus, some of which I wintered over and some of which I didn't. I also have some creeping Charlie, it's called. It's its common name. And I put a little of that in. I have a collection of that behind the shed. It is another invasive plant, and I'm trying to keep it under control back there. It doesn't grow real well, fortunately, because it could take over if I let it. But I keep a little just to put in some of my flower pots. I've also added another fuchsia, a new one, and this is a hanging basket plant, which will be here. Again, it's a shade lover. Try to plant things that are not shade lovers back here would not meet with any success at all. I've put in a pot of impatiens, and those are the ones we started from seed back in March, and they're already starting to bloom a little bit. I have several of these pots at different places around the shade garden. One of the things I do have to watch out for with these plants is slugs. Slugs are those little snail-like creatures without the shell, and they do like especially damp plants, tender plants. So I do use the Sluggo product around those plants. If I'm having a trouble, this is an iron compound. There are also poisons. I prefer not to use the poison one. This is an iron compound, which is much less toxic. And you can even sprinkle it on the plant or around the edge. The slugs will eat that instead of the plant and then expire. So I like to keep some of this on hand for around the containers that I put out in the garden with some of the tender plants. Now let's go inside and do some cooking. We're ready to cook some of the things that we picked today in the garden. The first thing I'm going to make today are some sweet potato chips, and I didn't pick any sweet potatoes today because I don't grow them, but I've cut these thinly, about 1/8 of an inch, using the food processor after I washed and peeled the sweet potatoes. And I'm going to make a little spicy mixture to add to them before we bake them. And I've got a tablespoon of canola oil in this little dish, and I'm going to add to that 1/2 teaspoon of chili powder. And this is a hot Mexican chili powder. And 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder. 1/4 teaspoon of taco seasoning, and I'm just using a taco seasoning mix for this. You can make your own if you wish with cumin and other things. I'm going to add also cumin to this. And we're going to add 1/8 of a teaspoon of cumin to give it a little extra kick. And then I want to add some cayenne pepper, a little bit of that. Okay, I added a little too much there. And then some salt and a little pepper. And I'm using the white pepper for that. I'm going to mix this around. Doesn't seem like much, but we'll add it, drizzle it over the sweet potatoes. Make sure I get all of it out of the bowl. And then I'm going to mix them around as well as I can with the spicy oil. Just get a little bit on each one. I'm going to arrange them in the pan, and it may take more than one pan. We'll just make one pan full at this point. But we want them in a single layer. They will shrink up as you bake them somewhat. And I'm using foil in the pan for easy cleanup. And I did spray it with some cooking spray. You can get most of them in there. Again, you may have to bake it twice or use two pans to ensure that they are in a single layer. This is going to go into a 400-degree oven. I did end up turning them down when I've made it before because they got a little too brown. But they will cook for about 20 minutes. You want them nice and brown and crispy, and it's good to turn them over halfway between the cooking. While they're baking, we're going to make a sauce for them to serve with them. And I'm going to start with 3/4 of a cup of mayonnaise. And to that I'm going to add 2 ounces of softened cream cheese and a 1/2 cup of sour cream. And I'm going to mix this around. Sure to get it all out of the container. A piece there. I want to thoroughly combine these. I want to add a little salt and pepper to this as well. Again, I'm using white pepper because it doesn't show up quite as much in a light colored sauce. And then I'll add a scant 1/4 cup of cilantro. Again, that's one of the things that we did pick in the garden. We have plenty of that. And I believe if you really like cilantro, you could probably add more. It has a very distinctive flavor that people either like or don't like. I happen to like it. And it's very good with a spicy fry. So we have our fries in the oven. And the next thing we're going to use that needs to be used right now are garlic scapes. And I have chopped up about 10 of the garlic scapes that we picked earlier. I'm going to put those in the food processor. I'm going to make a pesto, a garlic scape pesto. And I'm adding 1/3 cup of toasted almonds and about 1/2 cup of, 1/3 to 1/2 cup of Parmesan cheese. And I'm going to use a total of about 1/2 cup of oil, and I'll add just a little bit of it right now, and then we'll add the rest later as it processes. want to really chop it fine. I'm going to stir this down. And stir it down one more time. And then we can add the rest of the oil. I want to continue to scrape it down and process it until it's very finely chopped. If you want a finer mixture, you can also add more of the olive oil. And I think I will add a little more of the olive oil because I'd like it a little finer chopped. You want a nice pesto-like consistency, which is fairly smooth. We'll have a little bit of crunch to it and bite. Garlic scapes are a lot milder than the garlic cloves that we'll be picking later on. What we're going to do with this to make a dish that we can serve for dinner tonight is to add 1/3 to 1/2 cup of this mixture into some cooked pasta and stir it around. Again, I had pre-cooked the pasta. Normally you would add it while the pasta was hot, and perhaps a little of the cooking liquid as well, so that it mixes. I will probably reheat this. I used a whole grain pasta, ancient grains, so that it does have some nutrition. And I'm also going to add about 1/2 cup of feta cheese and some chopped tomato. Give it a little color and additional flavor. And again, we'll mix this well. And this will be reheated before it's consumed, just enough to melt the cheese a little bit. And thoroughly mix the pesto into the dish. Might have done a better job mixing it with the spatula. We'll serve this with a grilled chicken as a main dish for dinner. I still have some of the pesto left, and I might like to save some for use in the winter when the garlic scapes are gone. Garlic scapes are a very short crop. You get one for every garlic plant. But I can add this pesto to an ice cube tray. I won't fill all the spots right now, but you get the idea. And I'll put it into the freezer. And I can freeze these and have garlic scape pesto cubes that can be used later on. I might want to add them to soup or again to pasta. And this will be put in the freezer for later consumption. Another thing to do with the garlic scapes is to make a garlic scape vinegar. And I'm just going to curl a piece of one into a little sterilized jar. And then I'm going to add some rice vinegar, or you could use white wine vinegar. I'll cork that up, put it in the refrigerator, and we'll save that for about 2 weeks. Then I can remove the garlic scape, perhaps add another one if I have one, and then that will keep and can be used in salads for quite a while as we go forward. The next thing I want to do is something for our dessert, and I'm going to make a strawberry tiramisu. I've been picking a lot of strawberries lately. Tiramisu means pick me up, and it's often made with mascarpone, and that's what we're using today. And we're using strawberries fresh from the garden. We've had a good strawberry crop this year. I've been able to freeze a few. We've been really enjoying eating them. But I'm going to put these in the blender, and I'm going to add some sugar, it'd be about a tablespoon. This is a half pint of berries, a tablespoon, and orange juice. And I'm adding 2 tablespoons of orange juice. And I'm also going to add some orange liqueur. And I want probably 3/4 of a tablespoon of orange liqueur. We're going to be adding some more to the cheese mixture as well. And I'm going to puree the mixture. And I'll pour this into this dish. And then we need to make the cheese filling. I have the mascarpone in here, and to that I will add some confectioner's sugar. Again, about 1½ tablespoons. Another 3/4 tablespoon of the orange liqueur. And to that I will add 3/4 cup of cream, which has been whipped. Heavy cream. And mix and fold this all together. I'm going to use these Italian biscuits. You can also use lady fingers, and I'm going to actually put them into the strawberry mixture and kind of soak them in that before I put them into a loaf pan. This is a make-ahead dessert. These are like a crisp lady finger. And then we'll put a little more of the strawberry mixture on it. And then about half of the cheese mixture. Gets spread on top. And we're going to repeat the layers again. Again, dipping these into the strawberry mixture, setting them on top. Probably get another half of one in there. Get a knife and cut it. I'll put some more of the strawberry mixture on top. And then the rest of the cream. We'll finish it off. Now, it's ready to go into the refrigerator for 8 to 12 hours before we serve it. And when we're ready to serve it, you can dust it with a little cocoa powder. Loosen it up a little bit. Or grated chocolate if you prefer. And a few fresh strawberries along the way. This would serve about 4 people. If you doubled the recipe that I just did, you would make it in an 8-inch square pan, and that would serve about 8. So this is our strawberry tiramisu. Now let's get some chips out of the oven. Sweet potato chips that go with the dip. And these are the things we've prepared today. A garlic scape pesto used with pasta or frozen into pesto cubes. Sweet potato chips with cilantro sauce, dipping sauce, and a strawberry tiramisu. We also made some vinegar using the garlic scape. And we prepared some oregano for freezing, or for drying, for drying, so that we will have some things for the future and some things for today. You've been watching A Walk in the Garden on NCTV, Norfolk Community Cable Television. I'm Liz Davey. Join us again for another episode when we go into the garden again.